Uneducated Economist here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the most epic of housing market crashes, the collapse in the real estate market that is now taking place and has everybody very much on edge trying to figure out what it is that they need to do, because there's a lot of people out there who are looking for a major drop in real estate so that they could take advantage of those cheaper homes or cheaper real estate so that they could better position themselves. And then there's a whole group of people out there who are actually in the game right now who are not experiencing the same things that they had experienced, say, over the past 10 years, which has now discouraged them in a lot of ways. Now, to think about this, you have buyers and you have sellers. That's the market right there, right? Buyers and sellers. And the problem we are now facing is that the prices are so high that the buyer has literally just disappeared. And the seller themselves, well, they're asking a very high price for their homes. And so between these two, there's a major slowdown taking place within transactions. So the collapse in the real estate market isn't necessarily in prices like a lot of people would anticipate. It's the collapse in transactions that are happening right now. So here's something that's pretty interesting. The number of Americans, this is an article that I just pulled up, the number of Americans selling their homes hits major milestone, right? The article goes on to say this: the imbalance between sellers and buyers in the U.S. housing market has now passed 500,000 mark, according to the latest data from Redfin, as unsold inventory continues piling up across the country. And now for those who are thinking, okay, prices have got to come down on the fact that inventory is not moving. If these people want to sell their house, they have to lower the price. That's where the buyer is down there at a cheaper price, and the buyer isn't coming up to pay the more expensive pricing for this home. Now, something interesting is that if you look at the other article that I have down there in the description. All right, let me bring it up here again real quick. This one is titled this: Homeowners taking houses off market as buyers refuse higher prices. So what do we have going on here? Number one, Americans are sitting on unsold homes because the prices are so high, and the buyer is saying, hey man, if you don't bring those prices down, we're not showing up. Well, the buyer is like, well, if you don't show up, we're out of here. And so now what we're finding is that those sellers who had put their house on the market for that elevated price, and the buyer says, nah, that's way too much. That seller's looking there saying, well, if I can't sell my house for this price, I can't go buy another house, because the houses are too expensive. So ultimately, I don't want to sell my house, right? This is what the seller is saying, for any less than this, because simply I cannot take my money and go buy another house. So therefore, I am stuck. If I can't sell it for this house or this price, if I can't sell this house for this price, then I simply cannot sell it at all. So they pull it off the market. See, this is the problem that we now face. So many people are sitting on the sidelines waiting for a collapse to happen, not realizing the collapse is happening right now. It's taking place right now. The collapse is in transactions. And if you think about it in this form, it makes a lot more sense, because back in the day when we had the great financial crisis and we had that huge housing market collapse that was taking place, we have to understand, right before that happened, before the collapse of the housing market took place, there was a major build taking place. There was all kinds of construction jobs happening all over the place. Permit issuance and housing starts were flying off the charts. There was so many unfinished projects during the great financial crisis that they were literally bulldozing them down. That is not occurring today. There are very few starts comparatively to what was taking place during the great financial crisis. It's not even the same game anymore. See, really, we have to think about it from this sense. If you are a buyer and you can't afford it because even your good job sucks and it's not enough income to meet the interest payments, right, on those houses, because the interest payments are so high on those mortgages, you're just not even in a position in which that you can do it. Like I'll cut back, I'll do everything, but the bank says, nah, you just don't earn enough, even if you have a good job. The interest rates are just too high for you to pay this mortgage, so sorry, you're just not available. It's not available to you. right? Literally priced out of the game. And then on the other side, if that's you, if you're that buyer looking, it's like, how the hell am I even supposed to do this? Then on the other side of that, if you're the seller saying, hey, I need to sell my house, or I'd like to sell my house so that I can move to a different location, be closer to the family, be closer to a different job or whatever, you go to sell that house, but you have to sell it for a cheaper price, but you need to go and buy another house somewhere. And if you sell your current house for a cheaper price, you're simply just going to be out of the game to buy another one. So you're out of the game too. This is what we are now facing. See, a lot of times I think the seller on one side is saying, well, the greedy, or the buyer is looking at like a greedy seller saying, well, if you want to sell your house, you're going to have to sell it for a cheaper price. And the seller's like, I'm not going to sell my house if I have to sell it for a cheaper price because I need to go buy another house. And if I sell it for a cheaper price today, I simply would be out of the game, and I can't do that. So they're going to back out, just much like we're seeing now. Homeowners taking houses off the market as buyers refuse the higher prices. So this is going to continue to trend. Would-be buyers are pushing back on higher prices. The sellers, in response, are delisting homes instead of accepting lower prices. Nationwide delisting increased 47% in May from the previous year. This is a trend. Like, not a lot of times you hear like 47%, you think 40% of houses come off of them. That's not what they're saying. They're saying the amount of delistings that had taken place last year has gone up close to 50% this year. So if there was 100 delistings last year, there's 150 delistings this year, which I'm sure it's a lot more than that. Let me see if there's a number in here. Sellers delisting their homes. Sellers, as a result, don't want to take these low profits, so they are choosing to pull their houses off the market on average nationwide. 40% of homes have been delisted. 40% of homes have been delisted by their sellers. Wow. Annoyed with the negotiation process in May compared to last in the month of May. Right? So this is the sign of the times. And this is kind of scary when you think about it, because really, ultimately, everything comes down to doing transactions. Always. It's always about doing transactions. Whether or not you and I can come to a deal so that we could trade goods and services for money, or up, the other way around. And so if the transaction can't happen, it doesn't really matter where the price tag is. Like, you can have the price tag at $1 million, and if no transactions are taking place, it doesn't really matter. You could have it at $1 million, 10 million, you can have it at 100,000. It doesn't make any difference if the transactions aren't happening there. Very much like the same sense of when we here at the lumber yard were experiencing the height of the lumber market, when prices shot up to $1,700 per thousand. A standard and better 2x4, which would normally sell for around $3 to $4 a piece, was selling for over $13.50. The only problem is that we weren't really selling any because nobody was buying at $13.50. So even though you have a price tag on it at that price, it's the amount of transactions that are happening. Sure, you can sell a couple of 2x4s at $13.50 and say, yeah, I was selling 2x4s at $13.50 a piece, but I wasn't making any money off of it because I wasn't doing enough transactions. If you're doing transactions, 1,000 transactions a day, but your 2x4s are only $3.50, you're making a hell of a lot more money than if you're doing no transactions at $13.50. And this is why we have the collapse of the real estate market happening now. It's happening right now because it's all about transactions. And if the collapse in transactions is taking place, that's the collapse in the real estate market. Nobody really sees it. They're waiting for prices to come down. They're not looking at the fact that nobody is really moving this market around. Sellers are not wanting to take a lower price, and the buyers aren't willing to pay a higher price, or not even capable of doing it to begin with. So now this is the problem we now face. Who is it that can buy? The top 20%, right? Property owners and capitalists are the ones who separate themselves from everybody else. So you got 20% of the people who are now in a position in which that they can participate in the real estate market, where 80% of the people going, there's no possible way that we can even do this. 80% of the people, and I'm talking 80% of the homeowners out there too. Right? I mean, if you can't sell your home because if you take a lesser price for it because you want to move into another home, you're stuck just as well. You're out of the game. Right? It's all about transactions. If you can't perform the transaction, if you can't be a buyer or seller because the price and the capabilities are just not there for you, that's the collapse in the market. You may want it to be another thing. You may want it to be prices. You may want it to be something else than what it is. This is what it is. And as many people say, well, just give us some more time and you'll see the evidence of it. Okay, maybe, possibly. If those prices start to come down, do you not think that the property owners and capitalists out there are not going to take advantage of that position? Absolutely, they will. When there's a collapse in the real estate market with prices, do you know that most people are now suffering with the fact that they can't get a loan to take advantage of that? And unless you are in a cash position like rich people are, a collapse in the real estate market really does nothing more than separate the rich from the poor even more. That's the problems we face nowadays. It's best to understand it for the reality of the situation than being wishful, hopeful, dreaming that there's going to be some sort of thing that's going to meet your capabilities. Like, I'm just going to sit around and wait for it to happen. Right? Well, meanwhile, the reality of the situation is saying, man, that opportunity for you may never present itself. Think about it. If we are not going into an overbuild, then why in the world would there be all of a sudden just a flood of new real estate out there for everybody to buy? What we're seeing right now is literally a collapse in the transactions, and everything that we're now seeing is a symptom of that. As many people want to, push blame and, expectations into other areas of this market so that they can have a better advantage to take a better advantage of their situation that they are now in. That's a really wishful, hopeful, idea, and not really based in reality. All right. Douglas Dalio has good video with visuals explaining what is an economy. It's all transactions. It always is. It's always been about transactions. How many transactions can you do? Can you profit from those transactions? The ability to do transactions. That's it. All right. Money makes money. Money can. Negative, lower rates will make lending more restrictive. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I could see where that could happen. Let me back it up here. Brody, but since you're right. Friendly, it will make the economy less restricted. All right. That was when those awesome government programs start. Here we go. Hola, love catching the live ones. Well, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it. Saving money diminishes money. I think the idea of saving money is really difficult for a lot of people to internalize in a fashion that doesn't actually damage them, because there was a time in this country where you could save into like a regular savings account and actually get a return on your interest that would be somewhat beating inflation. Today, it's not really that kind of concept, right? Saving your money doesn't, unless you put it into like some sort of, maybe, I don't know, there might be some money markets out there that might get close to beating inflation and stuff like that. But for the most part, there's no real safe place to save money for any kind of long time. You have to almost invest it into something with the anticipation that it's going to go up in price. Like a speculation is the only real way to save, because no matter what you save it in, it just, most likely you're not going to really beat the inflationary scenario. All right. When the fire sale, UE. I don't think there's going to be a fire sale. And that's the problem that I think a lot of times people are anticipating, is that there's going to be all of a sudden this huge drop in price. And I have to ask, where is it that this drop in price is going to come from? Like, if you have an overbuild of construction, then that would make sense, right? All these construction jobs or all these projects that we built was too many, right? Now nobody wants to buy them. That would be a collapse. Or if you had a situation in which that people were borrowing money to buy houses that they were never going to be able to pay back, right? Like, you got, people who were buying multiple homes with no job verification, no income, no way of actually paying these things back. those things aren't those sort of issues aren't happening. So there was a time when people back during the great financial crisis, people were getting loans, getting mortgages that were never ever going to pay them back. There was no chance in the world. That doesn't necessarily occur today. I mean, what I had to go through in order to get a mortgage for my house was quite intense, right? It was difficult. When I went through the process to get my house during the great financial crisis, they might have well just handed it to me in a Cracker Jack box. It was so easy. There was nothing to it. But the second time, like this 3 years ago when I went to get a house, it was intense. It was so much scrutiny that went into it, and I barely got the loan, right? And that was with having money down and having a good job and having good credit and having all that other stuff. But having a foreclosure in my past was really damaging. So, you know, I understand there was a difference that was major, that was happening, that a lot of people don't want to consider, right? Easy access to loans and overbuild that was happening. Those two things are not occurring this time around. So those were major issues that really drug the housing market down back in the great financial crisis that we're not necessarily exposed to today. Right? And now, as we understand through the Cantillon effect that the separation between the rich and the poor has grown even more dramatic, especially over the last 3 years, there is no better sign of the separation between the rich and the poor than the property owners and the capitalists who are out there. The concentration of capital into the hands of a few through property ownership and stocks and bonds and, you know, those kind of positions are growing quite extreme. I mean, the people on the lower end are so far away from the people on the top side that it's going to be a very difficult task for those at the bottom side to try and acquire anything that's going to even be remotely close to those who are on the top side. And this is a wedge that is getting driven deeper and deeper and deeper. Every single time somebody says the government should do something, it's like smashing the wedge, driving the inequality ever deeper. And we are going to face more problems of this going into the future. There's no reversal to this. The reversal to it is a complete collapse of the entire system where everybody falls into pain and misery. So if you feel the pain and misery now, just think, man, if they're going to do anything about this system, it's going to cause more pain and misery to you no matter what. It's going to become more difficult, or the entire system collapses on you. Which one, right? Because the people at the bottom side are going to suffer the most. If you do not recognize it for what it is that's happening today and then do something about it, instead of wishing and hoping and dreaming and praying that there is going to be somebody who's going to come in and do something about it, you're going to suffer, right? You have to figure this thing out for yourself. You have to realize that, man, I need to earn more money than my regular day job because my day job is not enough. Once I have increased my income, cut back on as much expenses as I can, like to the point that I am living as cheaply as possible, and then deploy that money, that extra money, the money beyond what you're already making, all that extra money, you have to deploy that into some sort of return on investment. If you do not do this, you will fail. There is nothing out there that's going to save you. There is no system, there's no economy, there's no elected official, there's nobody, because they did not create the situation. It's the Cantillon effect that is happening. It's cyclical. They are the symptoms of it. Once you recognize the symptoms, now you understand the problem, you know how to deal with it. But most people look at the symptoms and say, that's the problem, let's deal with the symptoms, and they will never, ever, ever figure it out. That's what we are now facing today. That's the reason why I keep coming out here on this channel to keep sharing with you the underlying economic forces that I have recognized throughout all these years of study, and what it was that I needed to do personally to get myself out of the gutter at 40 years old. Here it is 9 years later, I'm able to pay my bills on time. You know how awesome that is? There was a time in my life that was the only thing I wanted, was to be able to pay my bills on time without stress. I didn't care about new cars. I didn't care about having vacations. I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted to pay my bills on time. You know how many Americans live that way? Like all of them. And once you figure out what it is that's creating the situation that you are now facing, and most of it has to do with the way that you're thinking and feeling and behaving in the understanding of what it is, the meaning that you are given this economy, that's where the problem lies. Once you recognize it, once you see it, now you can start doing things that are going to put you on the other side of the wedge, or at least give you the direction to go to the other side of the wedge. Like, I'm not saying I'm there or even remotely close to it, but at least I feel like I'm taking the efforts that I need to in order to get there. And part of that is you got to figure out that there is nothing that they can do to create the situation to make it better. You have to do that. That's the only person. You can only rely on yourself for this. All right. Boy, I really went off on that one. Okay, 2-bedroom house, 20-year-old house, cost $1.5 million. Are you nuts? Yeah. Prices just started to drop here in Florida. Yeah, but where are they dropping from? They here in my area, they went from ridiculous to absolutely stupid, and then they come back down to ridiculous. Right? Like, I mean, they dropped from absolutely stupid a lot. They dropped a lot down to ridiculous. Right? But not anywhere near affordable. Not even remotely close to affordable. Right? All right. Exit the system, find a new system. There is no system to go to. You can't invent a new system. The only system that can come is one that evolves, right? You have to figure out how you participate in a new system. There's the system out there. You learn how to deal with it. Figure out how to operate outside of that system. Figure out what it is that you need to do to have an insurance against a third-party claim that gives you the confidence and the belief that you can actually operate outside of the system. That's a difficult thing to do, but once you figure it out, it's easy. All right? You have to cut your spending. You have to cut your spending, and you have to increase your income. Markets are at 475 points. How? Because they dumped out 400 points last Friday on a credible threat. eCash. My place in West Texas is stuck, stagnant in the ridiculous level. Yeah. And I would say you're probably going to find that there is going to be pockets of opportunity where it comes in. Like, I can't believe there's still a fourplex in the area. I don't even want to talk about it that much. That has dropped yet another 50,000. There must be something wrong with this place, but it's a fourplex with rentals for like $600,000, you know. And I'm thinking, wow, what in the world is going on here? These things are coming up, right? So there must be something wrong with this place if it hasn't sold already, because to me, that's instant cash flow. Like, if you had the money, you could drop it in there, and the rentals are going to be paying mortgage and some income and all kinds of stuff. But all right, roofing and landscape industry is cooked. AI fake bubble, prostitution gig on the side. I guess everybody has to do something. All right, have 2 household income, but spend like only one person has income. That's it. Because rents are also declining. Hey, Ryan, yeah, dude, you could find it pretty quick, Ryan. Just look it up here. It's not too far away. Let's get it, you know. Yeah, you're right. All right, guys, we are under transition. Just take care of your physical and mental health. There's not much you can do. I mean, well, those two things, physical and mental health, are probably some of the most critical things that you can take care of to benefit you. Because if you don't have your health, you got nothing. And if you can't think right, you still ain't got nothing. So yes, your health and your mental health is absolutely critical for it. But there is plenty you can do. Don't think that you can't do anything. Because if you think that you can't do it, you're right. If you think you can't do it, you are right. I would love for someone to explain to me what affordable is when we live in a country where each person has different definitions of affordable. Little man mow the shizu? Little Mia, that's what it is. Little Mia moo the shizu. I love these names. You have to understand, like, back in the day when we were a production saving nation, right? Affordable meant like the average job being able to afford the average house. Well, nowadays, the average job can't afford the average house. There's this huge disparity between the two. So now, if you think about what it is that needs to happen in order for you to be able to achieve the average house, is you have to move far beyond the average income. See, back in the day, we had average income that was enough because we were a producer-saver nation. We produced the world's greatest stuff, sent it out there to the world. The world sent us their money. We had all this gold. Our standard of living increased. But now we are a consumer debtor nation, meaning that there's 2 types of people who are participating in the economy. Those who are consuming and those who take out debt. right? Now, the debtor can be the consumer, right? The consumer doesn't necessarily have to take out debt. And just because you take out debt doesn't mean you're necessarily consuming. The consumer who has used debt to consume is pushing themselves to the bottom side of the wedge. The individual who's used debt to buy cash flowing assets has put themselves on the other side of the wedge. So one has enslaved themselves, the other one has made themselves a capitalist. And this is one of the reasons why we have such extreme differences between the two. Now you have another one that says, hey, I'm going to work real hard to pay back my loans for my consumption that I have done. Other people have worked real hard to buy a cash flowing asset to get a return, a secure return on investment that is beyond that of their occupation. You see how these two wedges are, you see how the wedge is formed? Some people end up on the top side, some people end up on the bottom side. And so it's not the fault of the system, it's the fault of the individual who then recognizes, man, I have an opportunity to borrow this money and deploy it into a business. Man, I have an opportunity to buy a Lexus. That's the problem. It doesn't have anything to do with politicians. It doesn't have anything to do with bankers. It has to do with you and your move into a luxurious experience, or the majority of the people doing it. All right, we got a $10 super chat coming from JK. Thank you so much for the $10. Don't rely on wages or transfers of payment from the government, Social Security, Medicaid, welfare. Only rely on passive income from assets. And I definitely agree with that, Jay. Like me personally, I don't think about getting the Social Security. Like if it's there at the end, I mean, I put a lot of time and effort into a day job that participated into Social Security. It would be nice if it's there, right? When I go to retire, when I go to file it, it would be nice if it's there. Do I have an expectations of it? Not really. Like I kind of do, just because it's like, you know, it's in the back of your head. But my plan is for it to not be there, right? To do something else outside of that Social Security. Because what if it's not there? Then I screwed up by relying on the government. And I don't rely on the government I try not to rely on the government. I tried to make them irrelevant in my life. And if I counted on Social Security, then I would have to make them relevant in my life. That's exactly opposite of what it is that I'm trying to do. All right, hit the like button, everybody. Yes, please do. So we are just a few minutes away from this ending. I got probably about another 5-10 minutes here, maybe 5 minutes. All right. Patriot Act allows social media AI to happen. I think it was going to happen anyway. The buyers have 100%. The buyers have 100% not disappeared. Where is the collapse happening? In transactions. I keep saying it over and over again. The collapse is in transactions. Like, everybody wants the collapse to be prices. They are like, no, the collapse isn't in that, it's in prices. When is the prices going to collapse? And I'm thinking, well, you wait around for the collapse. I'm seeing the collapse taking place right now. There is a crisis situation taking place right now within transactions of the real estate market. That is the collapse. All right? That is the collapse, and nobody seems to want to, people don't want that to be the collapse. They want it to be something else. Right. I rely on the fact that government will continue to be government. Yeah, that's it. I just appreciate these videos. Simon helps me phrase current events through official communications. Thank you so much, Will, man. I appreciate you guys being here. Let's get 1,000 lives. Hit the like button. Yeah, we're at 643 people. I only got like maybe another 4 or 5 minutes left before I got to go back to work. But yeah, man, keep hitting that like button. Let's just see if we can get it up to 1,000 before we end here. Go ask the thousands of former realtors, appraisals, etc. if there's a transaction crash, not value. Think more, folks. I look at the MLS daily. The numbers are decreasing. Boomers are looking into the rear view mirror when it comes to housing prices. No, ZN, they're not, right? They're not looking in the rear view mirror at house prices saying, hey, man, we want them to be expensive like that. What they are doing is they're like, man, if we sell this house and we move to here, are we able to going to buy another house, right? And they say, well, only if we sell it for this price. Can we buy another house over here for that price? And if they say, well, you're going to have to lower the price, they're like, well, if we do that, then we can't move over to this other house, so never mind. That's what's happening. They're pulling their houses off the market because if they sell that house, they want to go buy another one someplace else. But if the prices are going to have to come down, then they are not going to sell that house, so they can't move, right? They have to be able to move to another one. And this is where ever-increasing prices seem to work out pretty well for the idea of flipping houses, right? You can flip this one, move into another one. The price goes up, flip it again, go into another one, right? But if it goes the other way, then you're like, screw it, I'm just going to hang out and wait. And that's what they're doing. It's transactions. It's all about transactions, right? If you can't make it happen, if you can't flip them, move them, right? Then there's nothing happening. You can all sit around, wait all day for nothing to happen, because that's what's happening. You know? Gotta start a UE dice meme coin. That would be interesting. If rates drop, it's game on. But if what rates? If mortgage rates drop or the Fed drops rates, right? Because if the Fed drops rates, it doesn't necessarily mean that the mortgage rates are going to go down. The Fed dropped rates and mortgage rates went up. The Fed said they were going to stand still and mortgages went down. We got to stop watching the Fed to see where mortgages are going to go. You have to think about what it is that the people are thinking and feeling and believing about the Federal Reserve's move, because that is what's moving the markets. The feelings that people have about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve essentially just sits on their hands and does nothing, right? Credible threats all day long out there about what is going on. Credible threats coming from the Trump administration about what it is that's going to be happening to the Federal Reserve. But ultimately, the Fed just sits there and does nothing. Well, maybe next meeting, data dependent. Don't know. All right? And then all the news articles come out and start hyping up what it is that people are going to feel. If they feel that the Federal Reserve is going to be lowering interest rates because it's the appropriate decision to lower rates, because it's generally supporting the economy, then most likely you're going to have a finding of an easing in financial conditions. But if, they're looking at it with a bunch of uncertainty and risk and scare that's going into it, then most likely the people themselves are going to demand a higher return on their capital investments, and you're going to see interest rates rise. The Fed doesn't have to do anything. But the mainstream media and the projection of the information, the feelings that people have from the receiving of that information, that's what's guiding the markets, right? Because the Fed doesn't do much. They just they do stuff, but lately they just sit around on their hands saying, oh, well, data dependent, we'll have to wait and see. All righty, guys, I got to get going here. Yep. All right, one more comment and then we'll call it. Jim says, how are you getting homeless people to move off your land? Give them a real estate license, then they will be living in a Lexus at the end of your driveway. Okay, well, let's read a different comment. That one was a little sarcastic. All right, ZN, I want to be on the Fed committee and have a high-paying, cushy job just sitting on my hands. Yeah. They would let you believe, actually, they probably do a lot of work, but, they don't really do much to the changing of the Fed funds rates, so... Love this show. Well, thank you, Lisa. I love you guys, too, but my camera's about ready to die on me. Thank you for being here. Be sure and check out the links down in the description. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.